phone now officially says 10:15, so we will get started. So welcome to paper session 1B. And we have our first presenter, Kate Dellenbusch, with Forging New Connections Through Interdisciplinary Public Talks in the Planetarium. So let's please welcome Kate up. And for questions, I will bring the mic around so everyone can hear. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Hope everybody's having a good day today so far. My name is Dr. Kate Dellenbusch, and I'm a teaching professor at Bowling Green State University. And since Dale Smith sadly passed away a little over a year ago, I'm now the director of the Planetarium there as well. And today, as my title suggests, I'm going to talk about making new connections through interdisciplinary public talks in the Planetarium. And really, this is a little bit about the Bowling Green State University Eclipse event, since we were in the path of totality in April. And so actually I'm going to start with a little bit of our eclipse day, and then I'll talk about talks in the Planetarium that led up to the eclipse. And so here we've got a picture of the stadium that day, actually I guess during totality, or getting pretty close to it. And we had a big watch party in the stadium, as you can see. And our idea for it was hopefully fun, right? A fun gathering place for the community and campus and others who wanted to stop by. Since we're right on 75, we thought we might get a big influx of folks. But also to have a little bit of an academic feel to it. And I'll talk a little bit about a few of the activities that we had, but essentially we had a kind of an MC, my colleague in astronomy, talking about where the shadow was. We had some up on the Jumbotron. I don't know that you can really see, but up here, some feeds from other places from like NASA TV of kind of the progress as the shadow is getting closer to us. And one of the really key things that I wanted to have happen during our eclipse events was interdisciplinarity. And so that included the speaker series that I'll talk more about, and also during the day of the eclipse here. And so part of that included music programs. And so the band, for example, right, played kind of fun, maybe sun, moon related songs. But also we had a number of students compose original music that was played over the loudspeakers during the event as well. And actually, one of the composers is here, Colin, and is giving a talk later, I think, tomorrow. And so we had a composition faculty member who is also happens to be an amateur astronomer, and so he kind of led that effort to have students compose that music. And it was kind of space music, so it was to help set the mood and the vibe for the event. And then the other key component of the interdisciplinarity was a series of activity tables that we had. So they're probably a little hard to make out in this picture, but all along the sideline here were a whole bunch of activity tables and displays. And many of them were created and manned by students who are in a couple of seminars that my colleague and I co-taught about the eclipse. And so they got to come up with things like showing eclipse paths of historic or future eclipses, kind of a bunch of different things, and I'll show a couple of examples. And then we also had other university departments had displays too. And astronomy, right, of course, we had telescopes out with solar filters so people could check out the eclipse that way too. And besides music, one of the departments that really embraced the eclipse, I think even before I knew that they had done so, was the Department of History. And they had a display. This is a photo of part of it. And they also actually got a grant to make a really amazing podcast as well about eclipses and history, and they interviewed a number of people. And so their display at the event kind of highlighted some of that information. And this is another picture a little bit earlier as the shadows approaching, right? I don't know what phase we were in here at this point, but the reason I included this picture in large part is because one of the things that I brought around to schools and teacher professional development before the eclipse, my kind of traveling road show, was a big, huge simulated model sun, and then a moon and Earth scale model. And so during the stadium event, my big sun, I think 72-inch diameter sun, is the little couple of yellow pixels, if you can make them out there at the top. And then down at the sideline where those tables were, there was a little scale model, Earth and Moon, and people could kind of line themselves up to see the eclipse before the real thing happened. Right, another example that we had was just some kind of fun art things for kids to do, like drawing here, what kind of be creative, right? What's drawing or what's eating the sun? So a couple of examples there. And now, so that gives you a little bit of a feel of our eclipse day. And then before the eclipse, though, the main portion of my talk here is to share a little bit about our 11-week interdisciplinary speaker series. And so we had a number of topics from astronomy, history, music, art history, astrophotography, and literature. And it was really successful. I felt like we had about 800 people attend throughout the series, with many repeats. And I don't know, maybe it's legible here. It's a little bit small, but this is the list of talks. So to give you a little bit of an idea of kind of the breadth of programs that we had, I kicked things off with just a basic talk about why eclipses happen and kind of set the stage for what people would be hearing more about throughout the series. And I just want to highlight a few of these. I know I've only got a few minutes left here. But as I was designing the speaker series, of course I wanted a broad range of topics, but I also wanted to have something for kids to participate in too. And so one of the sessions, we partnered with WBGU, the PBS station affiliated with campus, and their education folks came up with a great activity session. And actually I had recorded some videos with them as well, kind of about being an astronomer and eclipses, things like that. So they showed a little bit of those, and they also did some amazing work making their own activity book. Here is the picture of the cover. And so that was provided to attendees. They had a number of other books that they had purchased about eclipses that families could take with them as well. And this was a huge success. So we had about 200 people, as well as I could count. Our planetarium only seats 114, so they were kind of coming and going. It was hard to get a good count. Maybe they were there for the free pizza and the eclipse glasses, but I'd like to think they were there for the eclipse activities. And let's see, let's look at a couple more highlights here. As I said, history got really interested in the eclipse, and so we had their chair gave one of our talks on eclipses in Mexican history, and I'll show one picture here in a moment. And they also have a regular symposium that last year they made it about the eclipse, and so we kind of incorporated that into the series as well. And for the most part, the talks were just held in the planetarium, but weren't really incorporating the planetarium, other than attendees could come to a planetarium show first and then stick around for the talk if they wanted. But I did, in a couple of cases, use our planetarium system, including for this talk on eclipses in Mexican history, where one of the main eclipses that Amilcar was talking about was an eclipse that was visible in Mexico City on the morning of August 23rd, 1691, and so I was able to dial that up and project it on the dome so people could kind of experience that eclipse a little bit. Right, and then we also had music really involved, and they really embraced things as well besides the compositions. One of the kind of symphony concerts of the year was about astronomy and nature music, and so conductor of the orchestra, Professor Emily Freeman Brown, gave one of our talks as well. And I know I'm just about out of time here, and so I want to talk about kind of what's coming up. I felt that this was really successful, and it was great to get new people into the planetarium for something like this, and really showcase just how interdisciplinary astronomy can be. And so I've tried to do it again this year. 11 weeks in a row is a bit much, so we're not quite doing that many, but 6 talks this semester. And the series is called Expanding Boundaries. and it's to tie in with a theater production of Silent Sky about Henrietta Leavitt this semester. So that production team is giving one of the talks, and we've had a couple of other programs that are related to Henrietta Leavitt as well. And we brought back the kids event again with WBGU, and so they had another successful day, a little bit more manageable than 200 people this time, but they had some great books that they found to hand out to families and activities that they did with them. And so I'll wrap things up here by just saying this was a really great experience for me to get to know some colleagues I hadn't met before around campus and make connections with them and find some commonality of interest, and to really showcase to our students and the public just how connected astronomy is to pretty much anything we can imagine. And the eclipse was a great way to do that. All right, thank you.
All right, well, thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions? And if you do, I will bring the mic around, and then maybe Heidi can start getting ready for her talk next.
Quick question. How do you get other professors to become actively involved in that kind of thing if it is outside of their regular responsibilities and their agreements or whatever with the university? In other words, that would be an extra thing, extra hours, that kind of stuff.
All right. Yeah, it certainly can be a challenge, right, to do that. Not everybody wants to do extra stuff outside of exactly what they're required. But really, I guess in this case, everybody was really excited about the eclipse, and so it was probably an easier sell. I had a harder time this time overall, although the history professor, Amilcar, and also art history professor, they got really into it, and so they already have ideas for talks. I'm going to try to do another series in the spring about the moon, since, although I'm not sure we're going to have a watch party because totality is at like 2:30 in the morning, but a lunar eclipse coming up, so we'll at least have a lecture series about it or speaker series about it. So I know I've got a couple of talks lined up already for that, but yeah, I think just people are excited about being able to make these interdisciplinary connections. That we always talk about, oh, we need to do this for our students, and normally it's hard to do that, right? So I was pleased to see our president and provost get excited about it too, as they get to kind of see this in action, what we all hope we can do all the time, but it's hard to do.
In terms of logistics, what was the hardest thing that you had to do for that big eclipse party?
Yeah, the big eclipse party was getting all the administration on board that we should actually do it. I think in part, initially they were on board, but then as we got closer, I had to talk the provost off the ledge at one point. I felt like that we should actually commit to this and do it. He was worried about people having a good experience if it was cloudy, right? Bowling Green in Ohio, it was more likely it was going to be bad weather than not. But eventually, everybody was really on board with it, and the thing that really pleased me the most was just how much athletics and campus ops got involved and were really supportive of doing it at the stadium.
That was a wonderful program you had, and thank you for the lecture. I'm wondering if Dale Smith had any input as he was planning way ahead for some of the things that happened. He always was very much involved in interdisciplinary things. And again, what you did is wonderful, but just wondering. Okay.
Yeah, Dale definitely brought interdisciplinarity to the planetarium for sure. He knew that we're kind of planning these things since I initially pitched it to the university in 2019 originally, and COVID kind of put it on the back burner for a little bit. But Dale pretty much just let me run with it, so he wasn't really involved in the planning for this particular event. But I'm sure he would have been supportive, and in having some events in the planetarium, although the speaker series really kind of came to fruition as he had already gotten sick. So, thanks.
All right, let's thank Dr. Dellenbusch again.
I took it off because I wanted to do something. Thank you.
All right, and now we will have Heidi Westrick with Language, Music, and Creation Interdisciplinary Projects in the Planetarium. Take it away, Heidi.
Hello. All right, so I am here from Ritter Planetarium at the University of Toledo. Like she said, my name's Heidi. And I've been working on trying to integrate us as much as possible into the university so they can't get rid of us. If every department has classes with you, you're kind of essential to the university. It's worked pretty well so far. We were one of the few ones that didn't get a cut in the last round. So a couple of the latest projects that are super fun I'm going to talk about. This one in particular is a video game course that we had in the planetarium. So obviously not in the planetarium, but I'm sure all of you can imagine what this would look like on your dome. The students created different 3D, well, some of them were 3D, but all formatted for the planetarium. The class started out with the learning how to build a game with the end goal for the project to be able to make it in the planetarium with fisheye and fit all of the parameters. So this is one of our test cases to make sure it actually worked. Unfortunately, don't have any of these student projects with me right now, but they were able to successfully make them, some of them in teams, others individually, but each group or student made their own game for the planetarium. Most of them were about this simple. This is the teacher's example, so it works much better. But we were able to get them all onto the dome. In this one, you drive around and try not to run into things. A little hard to do this while I'm not paying that much attention to it. But in an added level of this, you could go around and collect coins. This is about the level that was expected of the students, so they could actually complete it in the semester while they were learning how to make it. These ones were done in Unity, but they did have the option of Unity and Unreal Engine. And we brought both of those into the planetarium. They are incredibly simple to bring into at least D7. I don't know about everything else, but happy to talk with any of you and see how your system might be able to do something similar if you are interested. But we were able to port it in and get it to project on the full dome. There was a lot of trouble figuring out which way to do it. In a few of the cases, there was too much of a lag. So any of the games, they would be running into things or not able to complete their goals if we streamed it, which was our initial idea. So we did have to run it natively on our system, which caused its own issues, but we were able to project it directly from our system onto the dome and make it significantly nicer. So I'm going to switch over to my actual presentation. I hope. Hold on. Here we go. Lost it there for a second. So, as I said, we were making these video games for the dome. The students actually learned a significant amount because most classes that they teach, to get closer to the microphone, sorry. Most classes that are taught in the art department are generally in a flat screen, well, digital, are all taught flat screen. This is where it's going to be. But as we know, more and more things are going toward bigger screens, different setups. We've got VR, which ties in pretty well to the planetarium. That was part of the reason we did this. They didn't have access to a large VR network that they could use, but a lot of the same techniques that they would have used for VR, they used in the planetarium. So they were still getting useful knowledge for them, even if they don't work with any planetariums in the future. And the students all got to see their projects projected huge on the screen and attempt to make them work. So they got to experience the unusual setting and made some games by the end. How functional they were is a wide variety, but they all did make it up. They did have some issues with making the games actually work the way they expected, and that was more of a learning the system that they were using rather than the planetarium itself. So that's something that in future iterations of the class, the teacher will be working more with the students on the controls themselves. We were attempting to get them all to use a controller. With our system, we have just an Xbox controller that can plug in and work with pretty much everything. We made sure that at least the teacher's version worked with that for the example at the start of the semester, and then they had the entire semester to kind of mimic that in their own ideas. Unfortunately, it didn't work all the time. Some of them did have to use keyboard controls, which worked much better, but did require someone to be behind the console. And I don't know if all of you are control freaks, but I don't necessarily like that. But otherwise, everything seemed to go pretty smoothly. In addition to art, we have brought in other art classes. I'll touch a slight bit on the end. But in addition to art, we've brought in languages into the dome. Not always specifically using the dome, but that was kind of the end goal, like with those video games. So I've been working with local high school Spanish teachers and then our international studies Chinese department to kind of help build lessons that work for their students, but also, again, bring them into our unique environment. So we have an extremely diverse population across the university, predominantly, but the city as a whole. And I believe about a third of our students are actually international exchange students. And we have some really cool programs with that. The first one is our Chinese program. So we have students come from China to get a master's in English education or language education. So a lot of them come in not knowing the best resources in English or not knowing how to get those into their classrooms in an effective way. So that's a big part of what we worked on. So with this project, the idea was they were going to do research in something that was potentially familiar to them, but we knew we could get content in their languages. So we're starting with Chinese, but hoping to expand to a lot of the other departments. And so they were studying astronomy, trying to figure out the history of astronomy, because it's not something that's taught super well over there in a lot of the schools, at least a lot of the ones that they came from. And this gave them an opportunity to find resources that I wouldn't necessarily have had access to because they are in Chinese and I don't know it that well. But they got all of the information and then they had to vet it. So as part of that, they also translated it. And that's when I also helped with the vetting, make sure that none of it was too out there conspiracy theory. There were a couple. And then they brought that into making a lesson plan. So they made that both in Chinese and in English so that they could use it whether they were teaching English students Chinese, giving them a history lesson, or if they were starting with their Chinese students teaching them English, they could kind of do a similar tactic and get them to learn history along with the language. And we found that it worked really well to actually keep them interested in the topic they were talking about. The other one that we were working on is Spanish. So again, I said this was with high school teachers. It is the, I believe, most taught languages in our area, for a second language, I should say. And I've been working with a couple of different high school teachers to create a lesson where they are using it in the classroom, but then bring that end of that lesson into the planetarium where they put it into practice more. So they start with learning all of the keywords, concepts, all of that in the classroom, work with it, keep a log of the night sky or something so they're actually using those words, keeping a project. And after that, once they are sufficient enough that the teacher's comfortable with it, we bring them into the planetarium and have them listen to a show, at the very least a star talk, fully in Spanish. This was written by one of my fantastic former students. And then after that, we can either do a show on history, one like Tales of the Maya Skies, that kind of fits in their curriculum anyway. It hits history, which helps the schools bring them in. Or they can watch one of the little kids shows in Spanish, which generally have easier language to them. So we are still working on this and working out kinks, but we should be implementing it in the spring semester at a couple of the local schools. And I will eventually have information for this available to the planetarium so that you can use this in your local areas and get not necessarily just astronomy students coming in, but open it up to more with languages and things like that. There are a couple other projects that I just want to quickly say. We have all of our environmental science projects come through. We have photography teacher that every semester does faux space. So they figure out how to mimic space. A lot of them last semester were the eclipse, obviously. But they use all kinds of different techniques to make really cool things. And I do have a whole bunch of pictures of those if any of you are interested after. And then we have education students come in to learn how to teach astronomy. Give them a little bit more of a leg up. Have had music in the planetarium. If any of you work with the symphony in your area, come talk to me. I've got some really cool stuff that we've done with ours that I unfortunately can't share because we are recording this. And then theater department is working with us, and we're also doing Silent Sky in about a month. So we're doing some pretty cool stuff in the planetarium with that as well. And I believe that is my time.
Thank you, Heidi. Do we have any questions for Heidi? And then, Jean, you are up next if you want to start getting yourself set up. All right, yes. I'll come around with Mike. Here you go.
All right, so I just have a question. Have you ever used this program to try and like set up an actual planetarium show? Like, have you worked with the other departments to like have them make the music and people make a script and things like that? Or are you kind of focusing it more on just the class projects?
So right now that's our goal, but this is a little bit of a speedy tactic to get in. It's a little bit of a sneaky tactic to get into all of the departments, get contacts, and eventually, yes, we have done a little bit of this in the past. We've produced a couple shows, but the goal is to kind of bring the whole university together and create some different things. And part of the Chinese project, the students did actually take that content and put it into a show format as well.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
All right, any other questions for Heidi? We have time for one or two more. Well, Heidi, I think we should talk because we do a lot of these similar things, and I want to pick your brain on what you're doing and what you're finding along the way.
Fantastic. And if anyone does have any questions, I will be around all week. So happy to talk about it.
All right, thank you. Well, all right. And Jean, we're going to wait just about a minute and a half or so we start right on time.
Thank you.
So, while we're waiting, though, I will introduce our next speaker, Jean Creighton, with Roadmap on how to make the most of an anniversary. I needed this talk like 2 years ago because we just had our anniversary. 60 years. Woo.
Yeah, woo!
All right, Jean, you may start.
Okay, thank you all. Thank you for being here. How many of you have a anniversary in your institution in the next 3 years? Okay. How many of you in the next 5? Okay, good. Any 5-year-old, I like 60, 65, I think is fair. Yes, okay, good. So then I'm glad you're here. When I heard that we're celebrating the 100th anniversary of the first planetarium ever built, I thought, this is the time to take advantage of an opportunity. So I discussed with my assistant director, Victoria, Robinson, what could we do? So we wanted to involve as many partners, so it's very nice to be after 2 interdisciplinary talks, because we were thinking in those terms. We wanted to include as much of our community as possible. We wanted to get publicity in different media than we normally do. We wanted to achieve a big project that under normal circumstances we could never do. And finally, of course, we wanted a fun wrap-up. There was an asterisk on the fun wrap-up. IPS was celebrating the final days of the centennial in May, and those of you who are on campuses and those of you who don't know that early May is not a thing for campuses. We're all much too busy with finals and people completely shut down. So I decided in spring of 2021 to start really getting this underway so that we were ready for 2023. I have a reputation happily on campus now that I get ahead of projects way ahead. And that has served me really well, because the idea that there's a celebration next year isn't sometimes enough time to get good big stuff on the radar. So we had 6 informational sessions in the summer of 2021. There were 65 participants from 55 different units on campus. Ka-ching! Yes, thank you. Yes. Crazy ideas came in from all over. People are very good telling you what you should be doing. So our planetarium operates with 1 full-time person, this person, half-time, and 12 students, very part-time, who change every couple, 3 semesters. We had to limit what was possible. So the goals we came up with was to figure out some special guest speakers, to take advantage, even though this was not part of the global celebration, but we had solar eclipses, and yes, we didn't have total eclipses. I'm envious of people who did, but we had 90%, and I thought if Milwaukee gets 90%, I get 90%, at least this time. First laser shows and going to venues outside of our own. I had this wild dream that we were going to get everybody in MPS. I wanted a class of all Milwaukee public schools to come through the planetarium. And I said it in the end, I want a party at the end of the celebration. So those were our goals. It's too bad that I clicked, because now you know that Mae Jemison came, the first African-American woman to go to space. When I first put that out as a concept, people got super excited, and then I found out what the bill was. This was $50,000. Obviously, we couldn't do that, but I had spoken to enough people on campus that it got on enough people's radar that we figured out how to pool money to get the first African-American in space to come to our planetarium, well, to our campus. Our planetarium is too small. We had it in a big ballroom. It was awesome. 33% of the attendees of this talk were students. This is unusual. And 2 people in the audience were named May after her. So that was another charming aspect of it. We had an expert in Chinese history, and in particular celebrations of the Lunar New Year, Pu Chen, which we flew from Brownsville. And we have an Under African Sky series, which we've done now for a few years. And we had 3 different programs, 3 different countries, 2 of whom were graduate students at UWM, so they could talk about their home culture. But we flew Susan Murabana, those of you who are familiar with the IPS, she has been very active, and she spoke about doing outreach in rural Kenya. So that was also a wonderful opportunity. She also spoke at the business school about having a nonprofit, her traveling telescopes. 2024, these are pictures from the eclipse, but there's another asterisk here. Preview in October, we had a partial annular eclipse. Some of you might have missed it because it was cloudy, but that was our wake-up call. In April, we have a 50-50 chance in Milwaukee for decent weather, so we thought we better have some pretty robust plans if the weather doesn't cooperate, that people have fun things to do. We did have many activities, which meant that we would have been set, of course, free pizza. Somebody mentioned, was it you? Free pizza is a thing. We had 4,000 people come to our campus. It was a dream, and the day was gorgeous. It really was gorgeous. And I kept getting emails from different parts of campus, different colleagues saying, this is the best event I've ever been on campus for. We just felt that everybody came together in a way that is unusual. I won't say too much about the laser shows, but it was the first time that we did them. That was fun. We went to 2 other venues. One was Family Fun Sunday. Some of you might have heard of the Summerfest. It's a big festival, a music festival in Milwaukee. So we had that venue, and that means that we had people, I don't say we, I mean, we were just one of the many vendors there, but it was a great way to be exposed to a part of the group there that we would not have otherwise seen. And fun stargazing that we hosted in a community event called Chill on the Hill. Milwaukee is a beer-making place. Okay, this dream came through in ways that I didn't expect it. We were looking for funding because we wanted desperately to get bus funding to get all of public schools to come to us, and that fell apart. We couldn't make that happen, but we had put the seed. I had talked to enough people that when the Milwaukee Public Schools came to one of our development officers and said, would you consider doing our 3rd grade instead? I said, of course we would. So now I have 70 extra shows now a semester to accommodate 3rd graders. It's a fun, wiggly, squiggly group of people. When we came up with the name Starball, I know we had arrived. This is the design that we have for the party. And this is also getting us ready, 60th anniversary. Our planetarium turned 60 in 2026. And with that, I'll just mention the goals. We did eventually coordinate with 35 units on campus. We had 2 programs. I didn't mention the Ho-Chunk Nation, and I apologize. I don't have Orion Prescott is the person here. I am so proud. This is the first event on campus of Ho-Chunk Nation ever, as far as we can tell. So we're very proud of that. Our audience for both the Ho-Chunk Nation and the Lunar New Year was almost a third non-white people. That is different. Our typical shows probably have about a fifth of non-white people. So since that is one of our goals, to be welcoming different people in our audiences. May Jemison was definitely a big project that we couldn't normally do, and our planning for the party has started. Being at Family Fun Sunday in the Summerfest grounds did mean that we had a much bigger media appeal. Okay, so takeaways. I didn't say this, but I should say this first. The first takeaway is plan early. 3 years ahead is not too early, just to get people on board. Consider what your goals are. Not everybody's going to be able to do or be interested in doing the same things. Figure out what makes sense for your institution. Involve stakeholders both in your organization and your community as best you can. Put that idea early and then ideas marinate and see what other ideas might come up that you wouldn't have considered. Focus on projects with broad appeal. It's easy to have too many ideas that you would be scattered in too many directions. Figure out what you think would work best. And if it's something that's absolutely new to you, start small. Have a little preview of something and then see how that goes. It's obvious, but take pictures and videos so that you can brag after everything is over. Talk with your collaborators and see what worked, what didn't. And of course, of course, share your experiences at the next GLPA meeting. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Jean. Do we have any questions? Okay, coming around.
I don't have a question, but I'm planning on a celebration using the University of La Roche in Pittsburgh, and we're trying to get all the planetariums around the area to celebrate with us. And I'm getting good ideas from you, and I may reach out to you.
Please do.
Thank you very much.
And I should have had my email here, but it's jcrate@uwm.edu, and it's in the, well, come and talk to me. Come and talk to me. Yes.
Jean, great stuff. I'm wondering about how you got so many of the public out for the partial eclipse. In Cleveland, of course, we had a totality, and we were thinking that people were going to jam the roads. They didn't. You know, I guess the word got around that people had block parties and so on. And we had a lot of people come to our venues, but how did you get so many people to a partial eclipse? What did you do in the way of publicity?
How did I get people? So I have a reputation. I have a little bit of a reputation on campus. So we have newsletters. We have, I give once a month talks on the radio. We also advertise. We wanted it to have a fun vibe, and I think that was part of it. So we advertised that there are going to be art projects on the side. Also, a lot of people were people on campus, right? I don't know what percentage. There was a percentage. Probably, I'd say, if I had to guess, 30% of the people came from off campus. But most people were from campus. We gave glasses. I bought 10,000 pairs 2 years prior so that I knew we have glasses. I also knew that I'd be heartbroken if I had 5,000 glasses on a cloudy day. So we did give them out. And we waited outside of the student halls. So students had the glasses. And we also waited in places, in strategic places where people come and there is an eclipse happening now. And then you get enough of a critical mass, and then people are saying, well, what's happening over there? I want to be where those people are. And free pizza really does carry the day. We ran out of pizza very quickly, needless to say. I think we had pizza for 500. So clearly that just disappeared. But the promise. And we also had vendors who were selling like goodies. We had eclipse cookies. Like, it was just fun. We were just thinking of how to make it so that people would come. Students are the most difficult audience. They're jaded. They're tired. They don't have time. So we passed it. It passed my staff test. Would you come to this? That's the test. And if an undergraduate student would say, yeah, I think I would, then you're on to something big. Yeah. Yeah, thank you. I want to shout out to Lisa. We had a collaboration. We were hoping to do something jointly. We put in a grant, and there was ways then to fund some of the glasses for her school district and other areas around. So that was a great way. We started early, like that was in 2021. Yeah. I'm probably out of time. Thank you so much again. Come and talk to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. I do wonder if you had any Ninja Turtles show up with all that free pizza. All right. Well, while we get the slides set up, I'll introduce our next speaker, Rosemary Walling, with The Sky from the Ground Up. So, Rosemary, take it away when you are ready, and I'll give you some warnings towards the back.
Okay, thanks. So my name is Rosemary Walling, and I'm from Juneau, Alaska. The Marie Drake Planetarium is a very small planetarium, a 30-foot dome from 55 years ago. the old Spitz days, and we have a modern projector now. We're a volunteer-based organization. We don't have any staff, so we give free programs to the schools and also to the public. I've been in Alaska for the last 21 years. I've been in Tennessee, Boston, California, and eventually to Alaska. And most people down south in the lower 48 consider Alaska special. In Alaska, we consider Alaska special. When people come to Alaska, or even people who live in Alaska, they like to learn about Alaska things. And so for the last few years, I've been trying to get more educated and figure out how to do more planetarium programs that sort of meet that need. And so, do I control it here? I guess, there. So Alaska is a big state. If you plop this on the lower 48, it would cover at least half of it. One interesting thing I found out when I was doing an audience from different parts of Alaska, and I talked about solar noon being around 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock. Well, Alaska spans in length over about 4 time zones. So you can't say things like that and assume that it's necessarily true. I live down here in southeast, not too hot, not too cold, but we have a lot of mountains. And you can see the terrain in Alaska is quite varied. My latitude is 58 degrees, and it goes on up to just above the Arctic Circle. So the most common thing people in planetariums know about Alaska is probably the Inuit Starlore, because way back in the cylinder days with Starlab, they had the documentation of that, which came from a book mainly called The Arctic Sky. MacDonald was one of the first people to sort of document some of the culture in northern Alaska. But the Inuit culture, actually, it's a language family. It's not just Alaska. This blue area here goes all the way to Greenland. So even stuff in MacDonald's book doesn't necessarily specifically have to do with Alaska, but it is very close. There's a lot of languages in Alaska. This is just general language families, subfamilies. I think there may be something like 66 languages. I'm not quite sure. I live here in the Tlingit land. A lot of the orangish, yellowish stuff up here is what people called Athabascan. These days it's referred more as Northern Dene, related to Navajo Dene by a language family, which indicates there's been a lot of travel in the past. So what makes a place special? In a planetarium context, I would say it's latitude, landscape, and culture, mainly. And the context really matters. So first, latitude and landscape. This is how you might see it in an introductory astronomy textbook, where you see the effect of latitude on the path of the stars, also on the angle of the star patterns. So that's one indication of latitude, is actually the angle that the stars go up. And as you go further and further to the North Pole, everything becomes circumpolar. So in Alaska, the northern sky is just as interesting, perhaps more interesting than the southern skies. Another thing that happens in Alaska is that we don't see the stars in the summer. So having the seasonal change of the constellations, you could go fall, winter, and spring, but you wouldn't have summer. But thing that's neat about the circumpolar, even though you can't see them in the summer and you can't see them in daylight, they're always above the ground. And if Juno's 58 degrees, you can go that same 58 degrees and you can see the wide circumpolar. In that particular picture, they all look circumpolar, but that's just the perspective. When you look at the south, they will turn over if you are looking at a smaller portion. So that's how the stars move. This is from, I think it's called Chanquillo in Peru. It's a very famous sort of solar calendar where the sun moves each month, whatever a month means, from one location to another location to another location, which indicates that along the horizon, the position of the sun can indicate seasonal change. So if you kind of put all that together, here we have what I refer to as a skyscape. And a skyscape is a technical term that people in archaeoastronomy who are studying ancient structures, and especially some of the people who work on the program Stellarium, where they're trying to use that to really do detailed analysis of particular locations. So it's this aspect of putting the sky with the place. Now, in their case, they're actually trying to do 3D. So I'm not doing 3D. I'm just plastering things on a dome. But it's still a way for me to sort of conceptualize this concept that the sky is not really independent of the land, because how we see the sky is from the ground up. So here, typical star patterns and a landscape. It's not exactly where I live, but it's a close enough picture. So you see the star trails, and if you think about right ascension and declination, but I'll use the terms celestial longitude and latitude because it's conceptually easier. You see that each star hits the landscape at a particular place, and it's always that place. And that's because it has a particular celestial latitude. But the sun, and this is the sun in this picture, at different times of the year, it would hit the landscape at different points. So you don't have to be in Peru to use your own landscape to, especially with students, to have them indicate and actually observe changes over the year. You could have students or adults or a planetarium program which shows for your own landscape, whether it's a forest of trees, whether it's buildings, whether it's something in the distance, in our case it's mountains right next to us, indicate where the sun falls at various times of the year. So you can make it specific and you can make it local. So for culture and context, this is just one example of an educational program in the Yupik culture, which is on the western coast of Alaska. It was done in conjunction with the University of Alaska Fairbanks. It's a free resource, and it's an excellent source for trying to understand Yupik navigation. And it's intended for like 6th graders, so I can understand it. And it's an example of some of the aspects of how you can use the stars and how you can even make that much more complicated, trying to take what some cultures down south do with stars and see how they might apply to the Alaska latitudes. So there's ways to go like from, elementary school or middle school all the way up to college and have interesting examples for students to work out. In this case, they used the elder Frederick George. This is like a standard textbook where we actually talk about angles and degrees, but you can actually use it just with your hands without knowing the concept of degrees, which is what people did in the past to try to figure out, and I won't go through this, but it's a way that he used navigation without having to know that, this is 10 degrees and so forth. So I'm going to skip ahead. I may come back if we have time. But there were examples there of how simple things can be done. You don't have to have a big absolute scheme. You can use relative time. Yeah, how things change at one particular time of the season, how the Big Dipper tells time. Even though time and seasons are sort of conflicted in the Big Dipper, you can separate that stuff out. You can use stars rising as kind of a dead reckoning. But most of us in planetariums, when we think of how to make it place-based or local, we often think of star lore and indigenous constellations. For example, here's a UPIC sky map. This is something that these patterns would be something that you want to have on your planetarium dome. Here's an example of northern Dene, the Gwich'in traveler. My R got separated there. Chris Cannon is a professor at the University of Alaska Fairbanks who has studied over probably 15 years northern Dene. And he has a book coming out in the spring which covers his PhD work. The Big Dipper seemed to be a constellation that sort of everybody had, but as he talked to elders, he found out that it was really part of a larger all-sky constellation. And this kind of constellation can be something that's useful when you have trees around and you can't necessarily see all of the sky. So because it's right hand and left hand and so forth, if you see the right hand, you know where the left hand is, even if it's obscured. And it even made it into Molly of Denali, season 1. There is an excellent paper on best practices in the planetarium that's in the Planetarium. And the main thing is working with local cultures if you want to talk about local cultures. But what I would also say is that when you want to do star lore, you want to do stories, what you really need is tell where it came from and also indicate that there are many versions of the same story, because the story that you're telling may not be exactly the best version of that story if you were to talk to the people who wrote it. And so with that, I just want to thank you.
All right, we might have time for one question while Dave gets set up. Are there any questions? Hi, Jean.
Did you have any linguists to help you figure out who's what, like how the different family languages come in Alaska?
Yeah, there's a whole University of Alaska Fairbanks has a cross-cultural center with language experts. And you can't really talk about a culture in detail unless you understand the language.
Yeah.
It's really very close to it.
Okay, thank you.
All right. We will wait until 11:15 officially, but while we wait, I will introduce Dave Weinrich, who will be talking about Astronomy for Peace, a global perspective. But we are going to give this just a few more seconds until my phone says 11:15, because we will start on time. Okay, now go.
Oops. Thank you, Shannon, and good morning. Astronomy for Peace seems like a pretty big prospect, pretty big subject, maybe a little bit utopian, I don't know. But you look at the world, we see this beautiful blue marble when we look at the Earth from space. Until the late 1960s, no one had ever seen a view like this in person. And this view was taken by Apollo 8, I think, on the way to the moon in 1968, or it could have been Apollo 17, I'm not positive. But look at that beautiful blue planet, where every human being we've ever known has lived out their life. You know, all of human history has occurred on this beautiful blue marble. You look at the Earth, and you notice there are no divisions. When you look at it from space, you don't see any boundaries. You may see some rivers, but you don't see any boundaries, any divisions. When we look at the people of the world, isn't it similar? Aren't we more alike than we are different? We all laugh, we all cry, we all want better things for our children. So why do we emphasize the differences instead of emphasizing the similarities? I believe that astronomy can help us come together, can help us to see something bigger than ourselves, bigger than the petty little problems that tend to distract us. Brother Guy Consumango is a director of the Vatican Observatory, and this is an excerpt from an interview that he gave about his time that he spent in the Peace Corps in the country of Kenya.
And your story, it has some interesting turns. You got your degree at MIT, you did postdoctoral work at Harvard and at MIT, and then you went into the Peace Corps. I also had my doctorate actually from Arizona.
Okay,
don't want to forget that. All right.
While I was on the faculty.
Yeah,
that's
what
George and I
in
first
Arizona.
met.
And then you went into the Peace Corps, and you've said that you couldn't see the point of studying stars when people were dying of hunger. So I want to ask you how you saw the point of studying stars differently when you went back to astronomy after Kenya.
Well, I joined the Peace Corps with the attitude I'll go wherever they ask me to go, because they know better than me where they can use me. And after looking at my record, within 2 months, I was at the University of Nairobi teaching astronomy to graduate students. And that was my first clue that maybe there was more to astronomy than just, looking at the stars for your own pleasure. But even deeper than that was that I would go up country every weekend to my fellow Peace Corps volunteers' places, and I had a little telescope with me, and I had a package of slides that I would show. Do you realize that there are slide projectors that work on car batteries? That they had these all over Kenya because there wouldn't be a whole lot of electricity, but people still wanted to see the slides I had of the stars and the planets. And everybody in the village would show up for the talks. And everybody in the village would show up to look through my telescope. And they would show exactly the same oohs and ahs, looking at the craters of the moon or the rings of Saturn, exactly the same as when I would set this up back in Michigan. And it suddenly dawned on me, well, of course, it's only human beings that have this curiosity to understand what's that up in the sky, how do we fit into that, who are we, where do we come from? And this is a hunger that is as deep and as important as a hunger for food. Because if you starve a person in that sense, you're depriving them of their humanity. And being able to feed this, being able to make a person more human or make them welcome into the great adventure of the human race for the 20th century, going to the moon, things like that. That was really important to them and really important to everybody I talked to. And suddenly, oh, that's why we do this.
I first got the idea about astronomy for peace when I was on sabbatical in Sri Lanka about 20 years ago and worked with T.C. Samarnayaka there on the left with Chris Janssen, the other Chris Janssen. Sam had the idea, which he espoused in a conference that we had in Sri Lanka, sponsored jointly by IPS and the Sri Lankan Planetarium. He had the idea of using astronomy to bring people together. And when I was there in 2003, we went around to many different places. I spent many hours with Sam, and he talked a lot about using astronomy to bring people together. And he would bring groups of children, the Tamil and the Buddhists of Sinhalese and the Muslim, and he would teach them astronomy to try to help them to see something beyond the civil war that was happening in the country at the time. And his vision, this was what he said in 2003, that children study astronomy, they begin to understand their place in the universe and appreciate the precious gift of humankind and see humanity as a family. And maybe peace can be a result, a byproduct of that understanding. The Office of Astronomy for Development, part of the IAU, has many projects that they've funded, and their general goal is to work on astronomy development, especially in countries, not only developing countries, but many countries. And they tie some of that in with some of the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. You can go to their website and see that. I have links to the website in my paper that would be published in the proceedings. One of the projects they did was in Cyprus, where there'd been animosity for quite a few years between the Turks and the Greeks. And so they did a project called Columba, Hypatia, Astronomy for Peace was the name of the title. They mainly worked with children, although they did work with young public groups as well. Exposed them to the sky, had them do activities with astronomy. And this is from one of their co-directors. We all live under the same sky. That's a number of places use that slogan. And astronomy can be an effective tool in pursuing peace. And the children get excited, like Guy Consumango talked about. It doesn't matter where you live, people get excited about seeing the sky. And other projects were done in Western Sahara, in the Canary Islands, with some of the refugees there, helping them to come together and also to preserve their sky stories. And there was a project in Colombia, which was not funded by the Office of Astronomical Development, but they did use astronomy again to try to bring people together. And this is a more recent project, Pranvera Hysini from Kosovo. Some of you might have heard of her before. And they just opened a science center and planetarium, and notice who they named it after. Jack Dunn worked quite extensively with them. So this is, to conclude, this is what she said at their grand opening in June.
To stand in front of you here today. Thank you all for coming here to celebrate the grand opening of the first observatory and planetarium in Kosovo. And I just wanted to say this, that we're all here gathered from around the world because of one single reason. It's because of astronomy. It's because the sky unifies us all from all over the world. We're unified under this sky because we explore the same things, we see the same things, but usually we get lost with daily tasks and problems that we face, and we forget to study the stuff that it's so important out there, that makes you rethink your existence. So what you see right here next to you, it's not just a building. It's a getaway to the stars. This will allow you to see beyond your imagination. To all the young minds that will walk through those doors, I encourage you to look up, to explore, ask questions, because we're looking at the stuff that we're literally made of, that our atoms are made of. We're connected to the universe. It's our duty to understand and understand our existence, why we are here, where we're going, what's our mission.
So I think that astronomy can be used to help promote unity. And I would like to encourage people to pursue that objective in their local communities as well as countries around the world.
Thank you, Dave. All right, Jim.
You're fantastic. I think this is just such a great vision you have, and you sustain a lot of us just talking about it. But here's my essential question. light pollution is increasing so much. 80% of the world cannot see the night stars. Okay, people live under light pollution. Now, in some of these developing countries, it's actually easier to see the stars. How do you respond to it's nice it's one sky, but most people can't see it. Except in planetariums, of course.
They can see it in planetariums, yes. But they can see some of the brighter objects. I mean, you can go out almost any place in the world and you can see Sirius, and you can tell people how they're connected to Sirius, directly connected by the photons of light that have went, basically 9 years. So you can do some astronomy even in places that have a lot of light pollution. And I think that especially some of the developing countries, and some of the countries where they have a lot of war, they can still see the sky pretty well. So, a good point.
All right. Any other questions for Dave right now? All right.
I don't have a question, Dave, but I just wanted to say that the work that is being done in Cyprus really is amazing. That the Turkish kids cross a border they physically are in a space that they've never been before. And at first, the parents are principally spooked by this. But eventually the kids are all playing around, and this is a way of breaking through a major divide that otherwise could not be broken. So this is amazing work. Thank you.
And we're finding that in many other countries too. People are getting to know the other and finding out, hey, they're the same as we are.
All right. Well, we'll get started here right at 11:30, but while we're waiting for that time change, I will introduce our next speaker, Dr. Christian Greer, with the talk Requiem. That is such a hard word. Requiem for Wonder. So when I say we can go, we'll get started. A few more seconds. We start right on time. Taskmaster. All right, go for it. Thank you.
All right, good afternoon. I have to admit, I'm a little nervous because some of my mentors are in this room right now. And so let me just get through this process. I'm really excited to be with you. I haven't been to a GLPA in a while. The last time that I was at, I guess in quotes, GLPA+WAC, I guess for this conference, was in St. Louis when I was at the St. Louis Science Center for the Pleiades. I'm going to start off with this image. This image was taken at the Michigan Science Center, and I just want to know from you, what do you see in this picture? Just shout it out. What do you see? Wonder? Anything else? Awe? These are real. It's a real family. You're taken right in Paulette's Planetarium. Curiosity. Anything else? Shared experience. Joy. All of these are true. You know what I see? I see myself, and I'm sure you might see yourself too. I'm the president and CEO of the Michigan Science Center. I've been in this role for about 5 years, and to me, it's all about the mystery and wonder. And that started early in my career, knowing what that is. That second part of your life that you remember, as someone mentioned earlier. We're located in Midtown Detroit. What you see there on the red bricks, the Michigan Science Center, is really just the cylinder that the IMAX theater is in. But just off to the right, you may see a geodesic shape, and that's our planetarium. We were voted number 3 in the country. We've been top 3 the last 3 years for USA Today, which is very exciting. We have a really fun team that does a lot of really cool, interesting things. We work really hard, as you know what that's like, being in a nonprofit, getting things done, but we have fun doing it. We have cool artifacts and displays, which are really exciting, that get kids excited about space shuttle Endeavor. Yeah. By the way, that's being erected in California Science Center, by the way. This would be really cool. This is our planetarium, which is basically where Paulette lives. We don't let her out. And if you go to our website, it says putting you at the center of science. This was developed in 2020 as sort of a tagline, but it also serves as our value proposition that we really want people to be centered around their experience. Some of the themes that you were hearing earlier. So back to this, we have several values that we use, and we want to make sure that our experience is personal, that is social, and kids get a chance to share that experience. Someone mentioned shared experience on field trips. That it's immersive. This was an exhibit that we had just a couple years ago. It was called Level Up. Actually, Paulette had a Level Up t-shirt on yesterday. It's now Gamers Village, just working on that. We're interactive, which is at the core of the Science Center concept. When ASTC broke away from AAM, that was one of the arguments, was that our Science Centers museums. And they ended up creating their own professional organization. We're playful. This is our Towers of Tomorrow exhibit that we had that travels around the country, and we have a partnership with Lego to be playful. We want to be authentic, and we want to show people what it's like to do real science. This is Anna Sterner, former education director there that carried us through the pandemic with some of our online programs. Transformation is so important, having kids see themselves in STEM, which is a theme for ours, and to give them a chance to really explore at a young age. I don't know if GLPA or WAC has a teen engagement program, but that might be something to consider. And then we're connected. We have a NASA grant, which Paulette presented earlier, Urban Skies Equitable Universe. We're a Smithsonian affiliate, and we have a partnership with Lego, as I mentioned. So these are the three things to enhance, enable, and empower you as we put you at the center of science. Is all making sense? Just give you an idea of kind of who we are and who I am. So this is a slide that I've shown, I don't know, 1,000 times. So Paulette, I'm sorry about this. I would love to be able to like cover up the names, because I think our team would know definitely, not me, because I'm trying to like do an Evel Knievel jump into the future with no money. But Paulette's is so perfect. With our partnership with Lego, we did mini figures that allow people to really wonder about how to display themselves and share different things. And she has a Hubble Space Telescope, and you can see the certain things that define who Paulette is. It's really pretty obvious. I'll skip this slide here. So back to this again, because this is where I started. All the things that you shouted out are correct, and more. But I thought this was interesting because I don't know if the parents are teaching the kid or the kid is teaching the parents. So this locus of control of learning is something that's really important. How do we share that in our dome? Sometimes you're just a disembodied voice. And I've been there. I've done many sky shows, many star shows. I don't know what they're called at different places. Live, recorded. I learned on a Zeiss Mark VI. But this is all part of it. And you may not know me, but I know you. Because you may notice some of these people that are here. And as a matter of fact, there's somebody here in this room that's standing up here that was in this group in 1993. And what's crazy is when I came in, I saw Paulette and I got registered. This is Eric Schur, I think, to my left. He looks like a hitman, but this is Eric. And he was standing right there as I signed in. That's crazy. This is many, many years ago. Lots of other people. Carl Winning, who's no longer with us, is right to my right, and a bunch of other folks that you probably know in this image. But it just makes a big difference. April Witt, who initially hired me at Adler Planetarium in 1991 as an intern's assistant, actually. So I came back there. Todd Slisher, you probably know, used to be at Detroit Science Center. And I took a photo, and I was like, I've been here before. Where have I been here? And then I dug up that image. I've served 4 planetariums. I can say I am really excited to be able to say I got my start at Adler in my hometown, at Denver Museum of Nature and Science, working with Gates Planetarium, getting that started, in Space Odyssey. St. Louis Science Center was a big deal for me to be able to just be in Gil Albata's hyperboloid dome, and then now at the Michigan Science Center. But I see Adler as sort of where my start is, and there are a couple of people that really helped mentor me over the years, and I still follow them online because I'll call them out. I call him Dr. Sweitzer. But Dr. Sweitzer posts online, and you've seen him, and others do this, all of his just discoveries from his backyard with his telescope. Look what I saw, look what I saw, look what I saw. He's been long since gone through so many different planetariums and do so many things. And do you think for one moment he's lost that wonder? For one moment. Not a moment has passed. And that inspires us. So we have to pass the torch. Fortunate enough to be at the total solar eclipse in Cleveland with our counterparts there at the Science Center of Great Lakes, and my son and I got on TV, and he talked about how, I didn't know what he was going to say. You know, this is international TV, and I wish I could show the clip, but I don't have time. But long story short, he said, you know, this isn't my first eclipse, but this one was really cool. And I was thinking, you know, I'm like, kids, you know, like, do you know how much people want to see a total solar eclipse that's gone their whole life and they've never seen it, right? They'd be able to ask that why if on the last day of your life. That would be a great way to go out, just like on a total solar eclipse, right? I used to take phone inquiries, and many of you, have anyone do this where you take phone calls or took phone calls over the years from people about things they saw in the sky? Okay, let's have some fun with this. Here's one. Who said that? Who said that? Who said that? Yeah, it was Jupiter that they were looking at, and they were like, when they described it, I was like, man, this sounds cool. This sounds like an ET coming down. There's these lights going around and everything. And then I was like, well, what part of the sky was it? It was in the southwest. Do you see it every night? Yeah. Oh, that's Jupiter. I was getting excited, and then I had to debunk myself, you know. But you may have seen this before, and this is a really interesting way of thinking about how do we go about thinking and breaking down what's what. Right? Let's not forget these things. I got to keep going because I'm on. Here's another question I got. This is a legitimate question, right? What would it look like? You know, perhaps there's been research done that perhaps the Earth did have a ring way back when. What about this one? So we talked about this with the James Webb, right, last night. Now, does it orbit around? It orbits around the sun. The sun goes around the center of the galaxy, Sagittarius A star, I guess, you know. But, like, what are orbits and where are they? And people have all these questions. Here's one that I really liked. When would the moon be born? I was like, I don't even know how to express this. Like, what the hell does that mean? But the guy, at the time, he was observing Ramadan, and he wanted to know when the sliver. And I was like, you know, like, but people have different ways of expressing that. We've got to get comfortable with this, right? All right, this lightning round. This was one of my favorites. This was on an outreach at Adler. Do stars have brothers and sisters? That's a ridiculous question, right? You would think. But not, because the whole time we were talking about stellar evolution and star birth and all this. And so the kids were like, well, I have a brother. Do they have brothers and sisters? Yeah, they do. They do. Many of them do. Some don't remember their brothers and sisters. All right, I'll keep going. So this is my place here. This is familiar for some of the people in the room. And these are my kids. I bring this up to say, this group, GLPA and WAC, really should try to figure out how we get to these new generations. Because although many of us haven't changed, because I see a lot of you in this room, you guys still look the same as you did in 1993, which is good. You know, looking good. But what about Gen Z? What about Gen Alpha? How do we connect with them and get their voices in this to pass the torch? You know, one of the most interesting things about Peoria Riverfront Museum is that a torch was passed between someone I know and someone I know. That's going to be really important for us to go into the future. Pass on that wonder that Jim Sweitzer does with his telescope. And I want to buy his telescope for cheap because it's too much for you to buy it new. So last but not least, design thinking and designing our programs around this empathy concept is going to be important so that we can understand how do we promote and share the mystery of it all. And one of the ways that we do that is by changing the titles of our shows. So I have Paulette up here because I'm so proud of the work that we did with her putting together what's out there. We said we want to just design a show about, like, I don't even know what it's about. And then we'll pick some things and have fun with it, with what people think are interesting, and use our technology to be able to do that. How do we inspire wonder? This show is really interesting. You know, I think about the idea in relativity, which I'll talk about earlier, which I'll just mention after the slide, is the most interesting concept about relativity is there's no privileged observer. That's kind of really interesting to think about. And in this case, we talk about the asteroid. We have an exhibit on dinosaurs. The asteroid crashes into the Earth and destroys, you know, all the dinosaurs in the ecosystem. But did anybody ask the asteroid its opinion? Like, I'm sorry, I was just kind of out in space and I ran into you, you know, center of momentum frame. So changing the perspective is critical to the wonder part of it. And this takes me to this. You know, there was a time in which you'd walk into the middle room for many places. Now, people cut holes in the dome. And for some of those that have been around, that was blasphemy back in the day. If you cut a hole in that dome, you were destroying the universe. And then people walked in, and what's that big bug in the middle of the room, right? This is a Dr. Philip Fox at Adler. But my point is that, and I'll end with this, for wonder, we will need to balance the times in which the technology is front and center and the times in which it's invisible. This is very important because people do want to know something very important. They would want to know about the ecliptic and how the machine works, and you do those tours about that at the end. And the why is because science starts with wondering how the universe works. And again, when I look at this image and I thought about this is the Flammarion woodcut. When I saw this, I thought to myself, wow, we're thinking about shining through the dome out to the public, but maybe what the public wants to do is they want to put their head into the dome. Thank you very much. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Christian. I think we have time for maybe one question while Jim gets set up. If there's any questions for Christian. All right, yeah.
Oh, there's one.
It's not so much a question, but I just wanted to share, we were talking about like your favorite questions that people have asked you in your dome, and mine is a little boy, I think he was 7 years old. He asked me, Mr. James, why don't we just bomb the sun? And it's like, I don't even know where to start with this one, but why, yeah.
You know, it's an interesting question. Do you guys know Dr. Stephen Greer? Have you heard of that name? Disclosure Project that studies, nobody? My wife, Elizabeth Greer, ends up getting his emails. And people send pictures of aliens and stuff and it's really wild. And one of the things he said is that the aliens come to Earth because they don't want us to use nuclear weapons because it messes up their technology. And I'm thinking that, like, don't we have nuclear explosions going off, like, in the sun and in stars all the time? That's nothing. Like, I don't even understand. So people don't really have a really good understanding of this, and we need to take time to talk to them. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. We are going to get Jim Sweitzer up. He had a very nice segue from Christian, so thanks for that. I will note, though, about the asteroids opinion. There's a children's book called Oh No Astro, and it is my favorite children's book, and it is about an asteroid that got knocked off and fell to Earth and and its opinion. So I love that book, and it's my favorite. Oh No Astro. It's a very short children's book, but it's adorable, and I love it so much. All right, and then while we're getting Jim set up here, we have Jim Sweitzer talking about the Shanghai Astronomy Museum. So take it away, Jim.
Thank you, Paulette. Wow, following Christian is a real tough act. I know he and I go back a long ways, but I'm in awe of him. I really, really am. It's like a mutual society here, okay. And I want to know more about lightsabers later, okay. Anyways, so I'm really happy to talk about this project. I don't think a lot of people know about it. I've spent a number of years on it, and then COVID came along. It opened up 2 years ago. I haven't been back. I've got a visa. I'm going to go back next month. So I'm just going to give you a preview of what this is like. The Shanghai Tianwen. It's amazing. Okay, it is. It's just out of the box. I've worked on maybe 40 planetariums in my life, and this one is the most extraordinary. The visuals, I should say, are from ENIAD, the architects, and also Scenario Design, the group I worked with on getting this thing going. Here's a few facts about it. It's in Shanghai. Shanghai has almost 30 million people. There's more people in Shanghai than Australia by a long shot. Okay, the planetarium is 43 miles from the city center. It's on the edge of the city. It's overall, the thing is 38,000 square meters. It's about 7 American football fields. That's if you include all the spaces involved with it. It has a 23-meter planetarium, the 30-degree tilt with just 210 seats. It also has a smaller planetarium inside, I think a 17-meter. It opened July 2021, right in the middle of the COVID time. Its attendance is now, it's typically 1 million people per year. It sells out online within 1 to 2 minutes every day when they offer the tickets. Okay, they're $4 for adults, $2 for children. Children under 6 are free, of course. The construction took place from 2017 to 2021. I'm there on the slide, maybe third from the left. Ye Shuhua was really she's most important living astronomer in China, probably, and this was a lot of her vision came up not that long ago to get this thing going. And so it's been really, really incredible. Here's where it is. This is a picture of Shanghai from space. This is called Lingang New City. It's off in the southeast. And they've built this out just since 2000. This is called a raindrop lake or something, and the planetarium is right here on the edge. And the scale of the planetarium, a dome actually is the size of the Earth compared to the lake being the size of the sun. A lot of things have been thought out. I can only give you a hint of what it is. It's complex. The design is complicated. It's complicated to be in. I've been in when it's under construction. There's like 5 levels, 3 public levels, 2 levels below the ground. Seen from above, here's a sort of a plan view. There's the big dome is where the planetarium is, but there's a smaller planetarium back there. Exhibit halls here. There's the entrance over here, but all winds together. It's a real labyrinth. This is the entrance hall, and has an oculus out to the sky. There's a sky deck that opens up on top. It's got this spiral pattern, and the notion of orbits is all built into the design. When you go off to the left of that into the exhibition space, there's 3 main exhibition areas. The first one is our home planet, where we're from, where we live. It's mostly centered on the solar system. I worked on the exhibits and advising them on them. There are 330 exhibits in this thing. This Earth globe here actually has a little Godot planetarium in it. And then they have a lot of exhibits on the planets and the sun, and they have a very large meteorite collection in this hall as well. Then once you leave that hall, you go up, and then there are these long corridors. They're all about 100-meter long corridors to get between the different galleries. This one has videos that take you back in time, and then there's a big image of the cosmic microwave background at the end, because when you go to the next level, it's about where we come from. So it's about really the astrophysics of stars and planets and so on. It has a powers of 10 gallery here. It has gallery on stellar evolution and black holes and how they work. It has, then at this point you're exhausted, so there's a cafe. It's called Einstein's Cafe. And I'm glad to say I worked on the blackboards. They wanted someone to be able to write, translate Einstein's papers into blackboards they could put up. They're very serious about science education in China. Okay, it's a big deal. I'm very impressed. Here's another gallery. The next one is called Odyssey. It's the next theme in which we go on the journey of both the discovery of astronomy. So there's a history of astronomy here in this 100-meter gallery, then into galleries on spaceflight. So they're looking into the future. And they do have exhibits on our missions, but they also feature, of course, the Chinese missions, probes, and so on. And their space station, you can go in the space station. Here it is from the outside. I'm rushing through this. I can talk to you more about it later, but this is 10 minutes. There it is, the design. But you can also see off to the lower right, there's a little children's camp there that they can actually stay overnight and observe. And there are 2 telescopes. There's a 1-meter telescope and then a heliostat. On the one side of the planetarium is where the big dome is. And they've managed to do, even the Rose Center, which worked on one other thing, they suspended the ball. So it seems like it's anti-gravity. But there's a lot of alignments. There's an opening aperture around the dome so the sun's light comes in as like a torus every day and moves around if it's clear out. This is the inside of the theater. They operate at 8K, but I think they can go higher. It's a Digistar dome. This shows the architect, and this is when I got started with them like in 2015, we were looking at the alignments. A lot of it has, the building is designed to have architectural astronomical alignments. It's really pretty remarkable. In the entrance, when you come in, there's an overhang cantilevered situation where it's open and cut to display the angles of the solstice through the winter solstice sun, summer to winter, cut through the building. And this is what that aperture looks like. It's been made golden. There's a reflecting pond underneath it. That's what it's like to be under this. People like to be under that, I guess. I'll find out. And finally, if you come around to the top of that spiral, you can go out on a deck onto the roof. So one of the design elements is this opening aperture to the sky. And it is probably the darkest place in Shanghai, you know, in terms of light pollution. Again, I haven't been there. I can't verify it. Here it is from above. Of course, they contribute to light pollution like everyone else. There's a lot of LEDs in Shanghai, if anyone's ever been there. So anyways, this is a quick look at this thing. I'm just thrilled to be able to talk about it. I'm getting very excited. I have a long-term visa to go to China, so I'll be there next month for a short meeting. There is, if you're really interested, and I'm looking at you, Christian, because you would be, or anybody's interested in architecture in these museums, there's a book just published on it. It's called Architecture of the Cosmos. It's half in Chinese, Mandarin, but it's half in English. It's wonderful. And I have an earlier copy, and it's on Amazon, and you can get I think it's going to come out next month. But it's a beautiful, beautiful book if you're interested in this sort of thing. Anyways, questions? Yeah, Jean.
Yep, coming.
Oh, sure. So was there something that you learned about the contributions of Chinese to astronomy that blew your mind?
Well, the Chinese blow my mind generally, okay. Just the amount of development in that country since the Cultural Revolution, the 70s and 80s were very difficult there. But just the rise and the acceleration of their programming. There will be more big planetariums. There were proposals for others. There's 1 billion people there, okay. So just their determination, the funding behind this, they have integrated this into their overall planning of science education. This Lingang New City has 4 new universities that have been propped out there, one on maritime sciences and other sorts of things. And I was awed with the Chinese teams I worked with. They generally work 9 to 9, 6 days a week is a work week in China for these young people. And the way I see, I'm very impressed. And I'm impressed to see where they're going with this. It has a big staff, and they're doing many other programs to go with it. They're leading other efforts, I know, in Southeast Asia as well. So I think in terms of science education, my impression is the Chinese will eat our lunch if we're not careful. We don't do anything on this scale here anymore.
About how much did this cost?
It's hard. That's a really good question. It's hard to say. I don't have any.
I'm going to repeat the question just so everyone can hear.
Right. How would it cost? This would be a Phil question, yes. So that's nice. What it costs. I have no idea because first of all, they don't have the funding sort of issues we do. This is the government, the Shanghai government, the People's Republic of China government funding. So it's not broken up into different funding streams. All I know is that things are a lot cheaper over there. Okay, so that, for example, like I've talked to them about these LED domes. They can do those. They do that over there. They're about at the 7th the cost they are here. So I think we would call it $1 billion project.
Because Shanghai has actually been built by the Chinese government to basically supplant Hong Kong. That was the original intent.
Okay.
Economic center. And if anyone's ever been to Shanghai, it is an incredible place to be.
Oh yeah.
Buildings there, more science fiction movies are shot in Shanghai than anywhere else.
Yeah. The downtown.
If you think this is fantastic, all the architecture is very similar to this. It's incredible.
Yeah, this is way out of downtown is astonishing. China Disney is halfway between downtown and this place, and they also have maglev trains that fly. So it's like Star Wars planet, yeah.
Oh, hold on.
When I was in Beijing a number of years ago, our tour guide took us to the planetarium there, and she was surprised that we as adults were interested in the planetarium. The prevailing attitude there seemed to be that planetariums were just for the kids. Is there a different attitude here?
You know, that's a good question. I don't know for sure. I do have the numbers on how many school children. I think 40% of their attendance are school, they would consider school children, whether they're just in school groups or not. I do know another interesting statistics on it. China Disney, okay, is almost all adults go there.
So, Jim, are the exhibits in English as well?
Yes, English and Chinese and Mandarin. That's another question. Young people there speak English very well. And unlike other countries I know, they take and study English. And so with the young people I work with, I often bring them books in astronomy in English. So just try to read Mandarin sometime, yeah. Okay. Thanks. See you later.
Thank you. All right, we have one more talk, so we're going to be getting that set up. So. All right. And then while we are waiting for it to be exactly noon, I will introduce our next speaker, which is Tiffany Wolbrecht with Planetariums and Climate Communication and Insights from a Global Survey. So I'll let you know when we are at exactly noon. All right, take it away, Tiffany.
Thank you, Shannon. Thank you all. It's wonderful to be here at another GLPA. I'm here to share with you information and preliminary results from an open survey. So if you scan that QR code, it'll take you to a survey where we're trying to gather information about planetariums and if they are teaching climate change or environmental topics in their dome. If so, what are they? And if not, why? What are the barriers? What is the interest? Those kinds of questions. First, I'd like to thank our team that helped to develop the survey. This is a partnership between the Astronomical Society of the Pacific, the International Planetarium Society, California Academy of Sciences, my institution, AUI, and the Astronomers for Planet Earth. Before I get into some of the preliminary results that we've seen so far, just a call to action. Please complete our survey. If you know that someone at your institution has already completed it, please complete it yourself. We want to see different perspectives. And you'll be contributing to research in this topic. So we'd really appreciate that. Diving into the results so far, as of yesterday, we had 93 respondents to this survey. The location is broken up here. You can see that more than half is from North America, which is overwhelmingly here in the US. And then afterwards we have Europe, with many being from the UK, and then from there the numbers dwindle pretty dramatically. So we would really love to get this to all corners of the Earth so we can get a complete landscape of what is being taught in planetariums and where the interest and barriers lie. In terms of institution types, you can see this adds up to more than 100% because people could identify in multiple categories. We have great representation with museum and science centers, college, university campuses, but we'd really like to see more in K through 12 schools. So if we can get more K through 12 planetariums, that would be wonderful. But of course, any respondent matters and is important. So please, no matter what your category is, please join us in the survey if you haven't yet. Our goal is ambitious, double our responses by 200 by October 31st, the end of this month. We would also, would be wonderful to increase the diversity of the responses, both geographically and otherwise. So I'm just going to highlight a few of the questions in the survey. It does take maybe 15 minutes to complete or so, depending on the open responses, but we'll just highlight a couple. Which of the following topics related to climate change and environment do you currently include or personally wish to include in your planetarium programming? So the blue there is what is currently being taught in planetariums so far based on the respondents, and then those red is what we wish to include. So you can see that overwhelmingly we talk about climate change through the lens of light pollution, but we really would like to have more topics surrounding local solutions, so local impacts and what's being done about that in your community. We also have a lot of interest in talking about sustainability and biodiversity. You can see that here. What obstacles or barriers to including climate change and environmental topics are in your planetarium programming today? You can see insufficient funding is the number one. That's a huge barrier for pretty much any progress we're trying to make in our domes. But all of these have a healthy percentage of respondents saying this is a barrier for us. Not enough access to appropriate assets or media, lack of communication best practices with our staff, concerns around controversy. This has become a politicized topic. So how do we navigate those difficult conversations with our guests? Being understaffed, lack of opportunities for training or professional development, and then just lack of knowledge about climate science. Which of the following professional development resources would be of interest to you and or your planetarium staff? These are just a few examples that we pulled out, but we did have some open-ended responses as well for others to include other ideas that might not be listed. Of the ones that we listed in the survey, modular planetarium assets related to climate change and climate and environmental topics was really high of extreme interest, but you kind of want to add up the blue and the red there because those express at least some level of interest. So looking at that workshop on climate science and workshop on climate communication, these professional development opportunities, there's a clear need for that in our community. Here's some answers to the open-ended responses, just to highlight some of the tones of what we were getting, the feedback we've gotten back so far. Do you feel climate change and environment are appropriate topics for the planetarium? The responses were in general very supportive of this notion. Yes, because planetariums are educational institutions and climate change is one of the most pressing scientific issues of our time. Absolutely, the environment and climate are deeply connected topics that we already explore, such as planetary atmospheres and ecosystems. So what support and resources do you need in order to include climate change and environmental topics in your planetarium programming? There was a clear need overall for additional support in this area, particularly in the form of training, access to updated and localized content, and interactive exhibits. So more support, resources, and training for Earth and Earth systems in addition to climate so we understand those effects better. Is there anything else you'd like to share about climate and environmental programming in your planetarium and the related support that you might need? So the responses in general underscore this strong desire for collaboration and sharing resources across institutions, as well as staying up to date on that latest scientific data and best practices. So we would love to hear what other sites are offering to the public and to schools, more support, resources, and training for earth science and earth systems in addition to the climate. So you can see a few examples here that show this desire to have more conversations and have more professional development opportunities for this in our field. Next steps for this, the survey is open until the end of the month. Again, we want to double our responses to 200. We intend to compile a report that details all of the responses and the outcomes of this survey in greater detail and give it to the planetarian, hopefully for publication. And that resource will be available to you. This data is all for you, so that you can utilize that in rationale for programming for your planetarium or just to inform best practices in your dome or anything that you might could leverage this for, it's for you. So please consider contributing to the science and the research that's being done, and keep an eye out for the report that should be coming out within the months after the survey closes. This is going to inform the environmental working group for the International Planetarium Society. The astronomers for Planet Earth are going to be utilizing this, and so is ASP. Just thinking about what are some of these resources that maybe we could develop that could support the community. This survey is going to help us articulate and refine that so we can start to fill those knowledge gaps and needs. Any questions?
Two questions, really. One is, one of the main problems is how to find who are the local players who do this work. And also, I would say another thing would be great is to have some success stories. One of the worries one has as a planetarium is, why would somebody spend money to come to my planetarium for me to nag them? It's better if you can show hope, that here are things that people have done successfully, here are what people are doing in our community, and you can be part of the solution somehow.
Exactly. Thank you, Jean. That's a great point. First, it's that challenge of connecting with those members in your community who are part of that solution, and then communicating that solution. So I think that is a need in our community to have that those best practices or effective communication strategies. And I think being able to articulate that is a good, solid, black and white step that we can take to say this is a need that needs to be addressed. And it's going to inform projects. If you want to go check out the posters in the hall at some point, I have a poster out there about one such project that is addressing some of the needs that are being informed by this survey, where it connects planetariums to local community partners to co-create stories of local climate and environmental impacts. So that project will hopefully help to address some of those gaps. But of course, we all do this together. We're part of a community, so wherever we can articulate those needs and address those needs will be wonderful. Any other questions?
So not so much a question as a plea for people to respond to the survey, even if I'm deeply, because we're a partner on this, I'm deeply concerned about the bias that we may be having in the respondents. And I hear like second, third, fourth hand, like people saying, just isn't what I want to be doing in my planetarium. Yeah. And if that's how you feel, or if you know someone who feels that way, please respond to this survey. Like we need to know what the thoughts are in our community around these topics, and we're interested in hearing multiple perspectives. We don't need an echo chamber on this. We need a real cross-section of how people are thinking in the community. So whether you feel that way or you know someone who feels that way, encourage everybody to take this survey, because we really want this to represent how our community is thinking about these topics.
Absolutely. The answer to the question, does this interest you in teaching in your planetarium? That can be no, and that's very valuable information, so please do. Yes, thank you.
I just have a FYI. We're running a new giant film coming up in January. It's called Cities of the Future, and it's a very positive look at the future. And they talk a lot of technology that would help climate change, one being solar power satellites, where you have solar energy beamed down from space. And it's a very good movie. And the hardest thing about climate change is to be positive and all of that. And so we're hoping it does well. It's sponsored by the American engineers who did Dream Big. But it's a great giant film, and we're running it in our planetarium. So just a FYI. So.
That's great, Bob. Thank you. It is hard to have that balance of acknowledging this and communicating this, and also having that sense of hope. But the important thing to remember is that other people are doing this out there. Planetarians do not have to be experts in this. The experts exist. It's about connecting with them and connecting with those resources that are out there, because they do exist.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Well, it is 12:13, so I think that gives us a 2-minute head start on your choice of box lunch.
Thank you all for your time. Thank you.